This conference will now be recorded.
And turn the lights on. Yeah. Requested old eyes. Hello and welcome. This is the July 27, 2022 meeting of the Monterey Select Board. We're calling to order at 6:01 PM. And I'd like to start off, please join me in a moment of silence for Richie Crittenden, who passed away over the weekend. He worked for the Highway Department in Monterey for many, many years, and we thank him for his service to the town. So, thank you, Richie Crittenden. The first order of business is to meet with Don Torrico, who's the building inspector. And just to discuss human resource policies and any input as we now have a HR director. It's been a while. I don't think we've met with you formally since I've been on the board for over a year. So
I know I have.
Yeah. So it's good to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you. It's about 8 years since I've met.
Goodness.
So
Wow.
Really?
nice to meet with you.
So a couple things that you may already know, but just to make sure that there's a clear line of communication. We got new town council, Donna Brewer, so obviously any zoning questions, we'll go to her.
Did you have a chance to meet with her when you had?
I did not, I communicated with her
Okay.
via the computer. We went back and forth, but she wants to speak to me via the phone. I do have some questions for her.
I don't know if you're in tomorrow night, but I think she's in tomorrow night to get sworn in at 5 PM.
That's,
Donna,
Donna gets sworn into it?
she gave us that advice actually.
Okay.
But
Because I didn't know you did that.
no, she
I
is.
guess so.
So maybe if you're around, and she's around, maybe she'll have a few minutes then. We have a new human resources director,
I met her. Good.
Sophia. And right now, well, you're a department head, but we're trying to send, if anyone who works in the building department has questions for the HR director, they should go through you, unless obviously it's about the department head and employees, or anything actually that's private or confidential can go right to the HR director. If anyone in your department has concerns.
I did read the new policy about contacting town council.
Yeah.
And I didn't read in there that I could not contact her directly because I'm actually a town officer.
Yeah.
So I felt that, and again, it's been probably 5 years since the last person I talked to that was council was Jeremiah, so.
Yeah.
It's been quite a few years since I've had a question, but just, there's so much going on in town. I do have a few things I'd like to run by her.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna contact her directly.
Yeah, so, and we have received another email from a department head from the police chief about the policy of having the select board approve request unless it's urgent, in which case usually the chair of the select board approves the request. So we may revisit that. I think we knew, we were aware that, sometimes department heads, and look, there's many professionals who've been doing their job way longer than we've been on the select board, way longer. And so it's not a matter of, I don't think it's so much a matter of requests are gonna get denied, legitimate requests being denied, or really any requests really being denied, as much as just maintaining a clear flow for the use of council, because we are paying hourly, and we have a limited budget. And I don't think, for the most part, people don't want to make frivolous requests. But last year we did run extraordinarily over budget, not because of department heads and officials, but because of elected officials for the most part. But I think that's the goal behind the policy, is not to prevent any contact, and if it's confidential, it can remain confidential. But just to have a clear flow of information.
And to help us track usage. And like you said, we don't have the sense that it was folks that were working for town hall that were gonna see some of the problems that occurred. But it, like lots of places, lots of other towns have policies where there's a clear flow of, so that people know. And if we were in a position to have, to pay for weekly or monthly office hours for folks, or, you know, to have them, what used to be called on retainer, but retainer just means in advance, but where there's the expectation that it's an virtually unlimited number of hours outside litigation, it would be a lot more that we would have to pay, like the situation that existed with Council Pollard doesn't really exist anymore. Nobody does that, which is fair. They should be paid for their time too. But it does put us in a position where we have to like be really cognizant.
Am I reading that policy incorrectly then? Because it was silent when it came to town officers. And I assume that covered the police department as well as myself.
Yeah, my understanding, and we might need to revisit the wording, but my understanding was that, well, I would have considered you and Gareth, and maybe incorrectly, but to be department heads of the building department and the police department. That's the way that I understood it.
That's the way I understood it too, but that doesn't mean we're correct.
Yeah. Certainly.
I had it town office.
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, like you brought up last time we revisited the policy, you're a professional, and you're not gonna ask questions that, you're a professional building inspector, and you're gonna ask professional questions to help you do your job, and we understand that, and it's not to hinder you from doing your job, but we need that clear sense, and if we start letting, you know, making exceptions, everyone wants to, you know, to be an exception. And I think, I mean, even if we have questions, we're going to the board as a whole and not just going forward with our own questions. And certainly if there's a timely or confidential request, we'll treat that differently as we laid out, but.
It shouldn't, we didn't mean it to be onerous, and I don't think it should be onerous, like, if there's an issue, if you can say what the issue is, you're gonna get it. We're not gonna deny you access, and if it's time sensitive, he's gonna get back to you quickly. So, I don't, it's not meant to be a hindrance, and if it turns out to be one, let us know, but yeah, I think it would be good for just, we just wanna have a sense of what her time being used for, and we'll find out on the other end, because we'll get the monthly bill,
Right.
but.
You don't wanna go like, what?
Yeah, exactly, but we'd rather not be surprised by it.
Another question while you're here is just about ADA coordinator. So we are trying to find an appointment, someone to appoint to the ADA coordinator. And it's proving to be more difficult than I thought, because I don't know if my emails, people are going to spam or something, but the ADA coordinator is someone that would it be appropriate for you to be the ADA coordinator in your eyes?
It would be a conflict.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, an example, if someone comes to me and says, hey, the town hall is compliant, you know, and then I'm here pushing the town hall to spend money, you know, that might be frowned upon. You know, and say, next time I'm up for reappointment, this guy costs money, you know. But that's how it's always been explained. You know?
Yeah.
Do I benefit from that? Yeah, it might give me more work, so there may be a conflict there, you know, because then I'm filing the complaint or someone else is filing. But if I'm the coordinator, I'm the one that's supposed to bring it forward and work with the building official. So, you know, the ADA coordinator reviews it and then brings it forward to the building official if there's a concern on public property.
We feel like we should have one, we just can't find someone who's willing to serve.
No, I was aware of that, and I sent the website and everything else to the town administrator, so
Yeah.
hopefully you got that information.
Um,
Explaining what the ADA coordinator actually does and the training that's out there available.
in other communities that you've worked in, is the ADA coordinator position, sometimes have a stipend that comes along with it, or is it usually a volunteer position? I don't know if you would be aware.
I am not aware, to be honest.
Yeah.
Most of the time it was volunteer.
Yeah.
From memory.
Are there any questions that you have for us at the moment?
Well, I requested to go before the board just to talk because there was concern weeks ago of some issue and I just, to send my answers back and then not know if you got them and knowing maybe that you did get them, but there's not a reply, so I don't know.
Well, I didn't, so I guess, I'm not caught up to speed on what the initial,
Is
what,
it 33 Blue
what
Willow?
this is about.
Or something else?
No, I thought it was more, end of the year,
Okay, gotcha. Just the
the
30
budget
right, right.
and, the alternate building commissioner and that the fact that, he was issuing some permits, but if I have a conflict, he has to issue other permits and do those inspections, so that's where that compensation.
I actually that stuff I never got. So I don't have anything on it. Do you?
I do, have memory, because the alternate, there was some question over whether the alternate should be paid out of your account or the alternate account.
Right.
And was that cleared up? I believe it was.
He's saying he doesn't.
I don't know if it was cleared up. I never got a response,
Okay.
Okay,
but that's why I'm here.
Yeah,
right. And this was right at the turn of the fiscal year, right?
Yes,
Okay,
right before it. I'm assuming it did, because I sent a response and didn't hear back, and I think that was the solution, or the reason why.
Yeah.
One budget was over and it's just the wrong account number.
okay, so we'll follow up with you on that, and make
Okay.
sure that's settled.
One thing that is brewing, because there's gonna be a special permit application coming in
that would be,
from a lawyer that knows the laws, of course. And, it's been a problem because it's in the bylaw and it's not correct that when people submit a variance or a special permit, it's been going to the administrative assistant, now the town administrator for stamping. Because the minute you bring that in is when the time clock starts, the 90 days to be heard before the variance.
are they supposed to, are you saying they should come to you or they should?
No, the law states, the general law states that it goes to the town clerk,
To the clerk,
yes.
okay,
And it was brought to my attention again because town administrator's on vacation. Message was left and said, I'm not gonna be in until Monday, that's when I'll stamp it. And then the lawyer called me and said, And I said, yes, I do know. But it's supposed to go to the town clerk. But it's been in the bylaw, it hasn't been touched and
So our bylaw is not in accordance with the Mass General.
correct,
So the Mass General law supersedes.
supersedes.
Yeah, so we might wanna pass it on to the bylaw review.
yeah, I was just thinking that,
Might you
yep, I can.
pass it on, please?
But they'll be tomorrow to get it submitted and stamped from the town clerk.
So applications for special permits and variances should go to the clerk, not to the administrator.
That's correct. Do you want the general law?
I do, you
Yeah,
have,
I'll give you a copy of it.
that would be great, you
I
could
guess.
just email it to me either way.
Yeah, we, I don't know how much you're aware or not, but a couple annual town meetings ago, the town created a bylaw review committee. In a bylaw, it's not just an ad hoc committee. And, they were appointed, now they are elected, 5 members, and they're going through all the bylaws. And so they're definitely trying to clean up
All
anything
those.
like that.
And we'll probably have to bring it round again to town meeting to fix it all, but at least we'll know what needs fixing.
Well, I'll review it as well, but I haven't been asked, so.
Yeah, and one thing is, they're not, my understanding, so they're elected, so they do what they want, but, they're not reviewing zoning bylaws.
Right.
They're reviewing,
The
they're
town.
focusing on the general,
Okay, the general bylaw.
But that would that be in the zoning bylaws? The
general
bylaw you're
is.
referring to? Oh, it's in the general,
General is in the bylaws as well as the zoning.
okay.
So, and I would say that technically speaking, the planning board is supposed to be the one responsible for, dealing with problems in zoning bylaws. So if you do find something,
Okay.
the thing to do would be to email the planning board and let them know that this, that whatever zoning rule is not in accordance with MGL. Do CC me too, please.
Okay. I have in the past, so it changed years ago.
It did or did not?
It did.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was voted on to remove it.
Okay, so meanwhile, that application needs to go to the court.
Yeah, it will because the lawyer wants it done.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out, I don't want it to have to wait till the end of next week, because Terry only has hours on Thursdays and Fridays. If it's in Melissa's box.
No,
and
it's
she's out-
coming in tomorrow night.
Okay, so he's gonna bring it to
Coordinated
the
so
court,
that
gotcha, okay,
Terry will be here and
Okay.
she'll accept it.
okay. What did happen, the 33 Blue Hill Road, I actually emailed them, just to make sure they were satisfied, and that seems all cleared up, and you feel like it's cleared up on your end?
Yeah, because on my end, I checked it out and it all.
Okay.
Again, we talked separately and said, yes, it would be nice if someone communicated that it was inspected rather than just put it online.
Okay, good.
But most contractors do go back into the system and see if the inspections have been uploaded to move forward. Fortunately, they didn't, and then it's weeks later too.
Well,
I was very surprised to check into the system, and I can't do that. I have to do it through the provider. They said it came in on the day that it was entered.
Cool.
So I had said, you can edit that. And
I could see from their standpoint, if they were told the inspection wouldn't be done.
Right.
Unless they were there, that they
correct,
wouldn't even think to go look to see if it had been done, because they were told it wasn't going to be done.
Right.
So that's an awkward situation.
it is,
And another thing is, off topic, but Susan could get an account on Permitize if she wants, right? To get a sense of,
You get what?
Permitize is the online building permit software, and it shows when the applications come in and when they're finalized and.
yeah, you can go through the whole system and see how the accounting too, you can see when inspections are completed and, there's a inspection schedule too. You can see how many different inspections a building or inspector's doing. I think I'm the only one that's using that because the inspectors don't get mileage. The plumbing, gas, and electric inspectors
Don't
get paid a stipend for every inspection,
Right.
and that includes the mileage.
Okay. Makes sense.
But we have an account in there where they get paid for the rough inspection, they get paid for the final inspection, or repeat inspections, so everything is accounted for and within that system. So we can tell when the rough has been done, we can tell when the final's been done with a date and sign up.
Okay. So you could, but I guess I misunderstood. So you couldn't originally see whether that particular inspection had been done because why?
I could see it.
You could see, okay, sorry.
My question was, it said it was done on 6:30. When was it entered? Was it entered on 7:20 and 6:30 was put in there after the fact?
Right.
And the answer was no, it was put in on 6:30 the day we did the inspection.
Well, all's well that ends well.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, we will follow up with you on the end of the year account difference,
Okay,
which we think has been resolved.
I believe it has.
And you know where to find us as other things come
I'll
up.
be contacting you to contact, we have permission to contact council.
And like I said, she'll be in tomorrow evening, so maybe if she was gonna talk to you over the phone, it's more convenient to chat tomorrow evening if you're in.
Alright. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Sorry, just taking a note.
So we have, at 6:30 PM, we are discussing tree work. At 6:21 PM. And I believe that we're waiting on a couple more people.
Okay.
So maybe we'll touch on another item and come back to tree work in 9 minutes. The next item is the Lupiani property. And the board has the choice of either offering the property back to the family of the former owners, take it out of tax title, and I believe the price on that is $14,040. That it would cost the family of the former owner. Or the town can keep it as a possession, and if we did that, we would probably put it out to auction. And if we put it out to auction, we would probably combine it with other town-owned properties so that it was worth an auction.
Just out of curiosity, when you say, that was one thing I wasn't sure, when we say combined, we're saying that we're having an auction for multiple properties. It's not that the auction would be all of the properties at one go, correct?
No, it's my understanding, we would split them up, but there would be
Right.
6 or 7 properties. I don't see why we couldn't combine them, bundle them all, but I don't think that would be.
It seems like a strange thing to do, like I suppose there might be somebody that would buy a whole bunch of different properties, but that seems odd.
Yeah, I don't think that was, I don't think that was
That
the
would be
plan.
odd. So I'm torn.
Mhm.
I don't know how you feel, but on the one hand, like, it's an unusual, I realize that it's precedent setting potentially on the one hand, but I don't think the specific circumstances of someone who was a minor at the time the original taking occurred, coming forward on behalf of the family and wanting to make it right, I don't think that's a circumstance that arises all that often.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like that's a good act. I feel bad for the town that it's been off the rolls for all this time. And I realize we could get more for it probably if we auctioned it.
It's possible, we don't know, I think, but the fact that it's been off the rolls for 7 years or thereabouts is only the town's fault, right? It's not the original owners.
Yeah.
The town didn't auction it, the town didn't sell it back to them. Once the town took possession of the property, the town just hasn't done, and we have, the 6 or 7 other properties. I think it is a unique circumstance. I don't really think the town is being taken advantage of. If in the future we wanna auction off properties as soon as kind of the town owns them, if that's even possible, because the reason I think the town owns these, and also the reason they haven't been auctioned off, is because they're not desirable.
Exactly,
For the most
that
part.
was the sense that I had too.
It's probably actually easier for us in some ways to, if someone wants to buy it back, we haven't taken the steps to hold an auction, or we haven't held an auction. And I think if someone's willing to come back, especially after this many years, there was no guarantee the town wouldn't auction it off, right?
Right.
Could we try to auction it and maybe get more money? It's possible. But
But I think it's admirable that he wants to come forward on behalf of his family.
personally, I would say that I think we should offer it back.
I agree. And he's, you're not, yes.
Yeah,
I'm not raising my hand, I'm just nodding my head.
Okay.
yeah, I will motion that the town offer the Lupiani property back to the family, Bradley Lupiani, and clear the title, and the prior owner, or Bradley Lupiani, could take ownership, and they would pay the obligated fee of $14,040, which is the taxes from when they owned it and interest. That's my motion.
I second.
Is there any other discussion or comment? All right, I will call a vote. Susan?
Yes.
Justin, yes. Motion carries. So now the treasurer needs to take care of the details. And then I guess the other thing while we're on that topic is we still need to figure out whether or not we want to hold an auction for the other properties, and they're wondering if we want to put money into perk testing the land, to potentially sell it for more. I don't know that makes sense, but we can think about it and get more information.
Do you have any sense of what perk testing is? Does anybody know? I mean, my sense is it's like the $500 to $600 a perk test.
I
But
think
maybe
it
I'll,
costs, I mean, depending on the results, it might need to test a few times. I mean, I don't really know, I'm not that familiar.
right,
Yeah.
but I thought it ran about $500 to $600 per test.
Everything's so
That might be
expensive now
old,
that-
right, I know, everything just keeps
You'd
changing,
be
so.
closer to the $1,000 range.
And I don't know anything about any of those properties.
Yeah,
You probably not
I
either.
don't, I
No.
just knew a little bit about the one you mentioned previously.
Right. The Lupiani property.
we can continue to look into it, and it would be good to do something.
Did you ever get a list of those properties?
I don't have it in me if I did.
I wonder if you think, would Don?
I think John Clausen could get it for you, because he knows the owner of all the properties. It's really, when you look at them, they're just not,
Yeah, I'm sure they're.
it's not 20 acres on Mount Hunger Road
No.
overlooking
The previous one wasn't, it needs a little bit of work.
Yeah.
Get it cleaned up.
So, and what we've heard is that the last time they tried to auction off properties, it wasn't, they were told that there wasn't enough there to even be worth auction. So, but it'd be good if we're gonna make the decision to auction them off, to do nothing, to just hold them. It'd be good one way or another to just make a decision so they're not in limbo, kind of like this was. And I think part of what informed, my decision was the town just let it, how long are we just gonna let properties sit there? And if someone's willing to buy it back, it's, maybe the best thing. We don't want to get in a habit of people letting properties go into tax title only to buy them back for less money than they would have previously paid, but I don't think we're really setting that precedent. So it is just about 6:30 PM. It looks like we have some members of the Parks Commission and the Community Center Committee Chair and the tree warden and the Director of Operations with us. And we're here to discuss the storm from a couple weeks ago and the tree damage. So, if I'm not mistaken, all of the trees that were down on roads they were cleaned up within a couple days, and Wellman Road's now open, right?
The Wellman Road was closed for about 5 days, Main Road was closed for a couple of hours. Marlboro Road wasn't really closed, but it took National Grid 36 hours to resolve their trees on wires. Couple of logs shattered here and there, we had to pick it up there. In that same time frame, we worked that area on the corner of the Marlboro Road outside the community center. Cleaning up all the pines that were there, tangled up. Check my house real quick, because you're up.
At least nobody died.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, Stockford, you gotta die, right?
Yes. Yeah. So there were 11 trees that were damaged over there, those white pines.
And the community center.
That's a community center, yeah.
And so the question now is, we have trees down in Bidwell Park. There were trees down at the community center and on the road. And there's suggestions from both Jim and Miles, if I'm not mistaken, to maybe do some proactive work at the community center.
Correct. So it doesn't matter to me which way we attack this, but, you know, like I say, Wellman Road's pretty much resolved. It's kind of water road dam. It actually cleaned up quicker and nicer than we originally had anticipated. So we came in under what our estimate was that we had, I had emailed you last
10-8.
week.
Yeah,
So that was a plus. We do have money budgeted for those events. Our storm damage account covers washouts, culverts that plug up and fail and take up a section of road. Those things that happen throughout the year. Unfortunately, this happened right at the beginning of our fiscal year, so, you know, we took a pretty good hit already, you know.
what other, I mean, so there's no way all that, like, the storm damage account only has like 785, right?
Correct.
So there's no way to accommodate this.
We just spent 7 on it, I'm cleaning up.
On just Wellman.
Right.
Okay.
So to give an overview on the funding sources, I tried to take a look at where, because there's a lot of different things going on, trees down on roads are in some ways different from trees down in the park or the community center, which is also very different from doing preventative maintenance.
That's an entirely different animal.
Right, and so when we look at funding, I'm just gonna go through, I think there's five places in the budget. So line 294, tree warden expenses is $43,000. But the tree warden, I'm not gonna read off the mesh general law, but it doesn't seem to me that the tree warden would necessarily take care of trees already down on roads. They're doing more preventative tree work. But that is $43,000 in that account. You look at the Parks Commission, and line 630 is just the general park account with 17,800. Line 630, Parks Lawn Maintenance, Spring Fall Cleanup is 6,500. Now, there's something in Mass General Law when you look at about Parks Commissioners. This, I think, is worth reading. This is actually in empowered tree wardens. The tree warden shall have the care and control of all public shade trees, shrubs, and growths in the town, except those within a state highway and those in public parks or open spaces under the jurisdictions of the park commissioners, and shall have care and control of the latter if so requested in writing by the park commissioners. So it's possible that the park commission could request assistance from the tree warden in trees under the jurisdiction of the park commission. But again, the way I understand it, the tree warden has to focus.
Yeah,
There's some background noise, so if you could just mute while you're not speaking, please.
yeah.
Thank you. So, sorry to get complicated, but it is, right?
Right.
So there's the park commission has jurisdiction over the parks, but potentially could ask for assistance from the tree warden if they want to.
You're saying, let me clarify this, tree warden only cares about trees that could be a problem, not about downed trees. Is
Well,
that what you read?
the tree warden's elected, so he does what he wants in my, we
But I
don't-
thought what you were reading in that statute said that it only has to do with trees that could be a problem, not that trees that are down already.
we can, well, it says the setting out and maintenance of such trees, shrubs and growths. I mean, that's kind of up to Miles to figure out what he thinks his role is, because he's elected and we don't have any authority over him.
There were three different groupings, if you will, for work to be done. Wellman, done, parks, storm damage, everything. And so unfortunately, you all spent a ton of money over there on cleanup, just back in June.
Last fiscal year.
Yeah, you know, and it was really looking pretty sharp. And Yeah, it just was the line of that. So, you know.
Yeah.
This
Alright.
last batch, was it ashes or pines or what?
Pines.
Pines.
It's pines, ash.
It's everything went
There's
down.
there's a big hemlock that looks like it was just twisted off by itself, pretty loud. This one is up here by Brooklyn Apartments, is a
The
Norway.
one that snapped right off.
It looks pretty ugly.
Yeah.
And then the third event, or the third group, if you will, or third project was community center, which DPW pretty much took care of the storm cleanup, with the exception of removing the main stems, which like pines, that remain there. And how that got into this was because of the weather event, and in the short period that I've worked here, in 4 years I've been there myself, 5-6 times probably, 4 trees broken off and down in there. And we just lost 11 more on this event. There's 20. Did you see the email I sent earlier today?
Yeah, and so
There's
you had a map, the stand closer to New Marlboro Road, right? And then
And then the one on
the one closer to the Heath property.
Right. That's the one that I reviewed, the area that I outlined in red is the area that I reviewed with John Field.
Yeah.
That's the one that took the most damage and has the most broken trees. And there are 27 trees in that L shape. And they're all white pine now. Don't get the wrong idea, it wouldn't be clear cutting that whole thing. This is just to set his crane up, rig the tree, saw it at the base, and they'll fly it out of there and chip it. The hemlocks that are there would remain, the maples that are there would remain.
The problem is when you have storm damage like this, it takes out trees. When you take out one tree and there's a group of them, that you're taking the sail out of the trees because you took this tree out and now this tree's taking all the wind now. So when pine trees are weak and they always snap. With the 16 years of me doing tree work, it's always pines that are snapping off 30, 40 feet off the ground 95% of the time. They never snap really at the base, unless they're right. But with the winds and the storms we've been having, you can't predict anything.
So additionally, looking at that property, as I was over there walking again, getting a good solid count on the trees and all that. I got thinking more in the last couple of days about the strip between the community center and the neighbors to the east.
The one that was red on that,
That was the one we outlined in yellow.
in yellow, okay, right.
Uh,
To the east side.
And there was a problem, you might recall, down near the barns a few years ago.
Yeah, so, and that's another place, I remember limbs or trees falling over the years.
Yeah.
And I think the highway department did end up cleaning them up because they fell from the town property.
Yeah, I know it was involved.
So, yeah, Jerry,
My question is, have either of you looked at Bidwell Park and seen or would make a projection of what we might be in store of? And we know what came down.
So
What does it look like if we have another storm? Are a lot more trees gonna come down there?
It all depends on the storm.
So I'm saying, did you look at, in other words, the shape of what's left? Have you done a survey and seen like basically, what does it look like down there?
No, the only sort of recon that I did there was with our tree contractor. And to sort of establish a budget for the cleanup for what's there. And that would involve removing anything that's clearly down, and main stems that remain that are broken off, and any hangers that are around, anything that, you would deem bad.
What was that budget, Jim?
25.6.
So-
I'm looking at,
before we get,
25,000?
yes.
before we get too far into the details, I do want to finish a general overview of the potential funding sources. So we have the tree warden line at the jurisdiction of the tree warden. The 2 Parks Commission lines, I think probably the General Parks Commission, and we talked about that. There's the revolving fund for the community center, but that's only $11,349. And then line 422 is highway operations, which the whole line is $203,720, but the subline for storm damage is $17,500. So those are, by my analysis, the places, and depending on who's in charge of it, whether the trees, whether it's proactive work, whether it's in a park or next to the road, whoever decides that it's within their authority, the lines where we have money right now, if, because it was kind of an extraordinary and unusual expense, and depending how we move forward, I would think the other places we could seek funding is if it can wait at next year's, depending on what it is, next year's annual town meeting, we could request more on any of those lines. But if it's more urgent, we could call a special town meeting and raise any of those lines. And at this point, we could use stabilization. If we waited until the fall, we could dip into free cash once it's certified. Another thing that I think would probably be appropriate in this situation, and wouldn't be up to the select board, but would be a reserve fund transfer request from the finance committee. They have $30,000. It's ultimately completely up to their discretion as to how it gets spent. But if you look at Mass General Law, it does say to provide for extraordinary or unforeseen expenditures, which I would consider this to be an extraordinary or unforeseen expenditure. There's a discussion, I don't know where it comes from, but that an account should be spent down before you make a reserve fund transfer request. Obviously, because it's beginning of the fiscal year, most of these accounts, like highway operations or park commission general, are not gonna be spent down. So depending on what your finance committee, which right now is only 2 members, but depending on what they think, they might say, well, the account's not spent down. I don't know. If I was on the finance committee, I would think it's extraordinary and unforeseen. We're at the very beginning of the fiscal year, and to ask, depending where the money's coming from, this would be a big hit to certain accounts. So the way I look at it, there's a few steps we need to come up with, which is first, who's responsible for the most urgent? And Jim and the highway department have already taken care of the really urgent stuff down on roads, to my understanding. The second thing is who's responsible for, like the stems from those pines are still kind of up. I don't know that they necessarily pose a hazard, but they're kind of unsightly. Who's responsible for taking care of that? Out of which line is it coming from? If it's more than what's in the line, or if it's not, and it would just deplete the line, are we gonna get more money from the reserve fund and the finance committee? Are we gonna call a special town meeting? If it's proactive work, maybe it can wait, and we don't wanna put anyone in danger, but maybe some of this work could wait till we can get money at next year's annual town meeting. So there's a lot going on. And there's the situation at Bidwell Park, which is very different from the situation at the community center. And I would hope that one way or another, we can find a solution where, we don't spend the whole park commission budget on tree work at the beginning of the year, and the park commission is prevented from doing anything else.
And I'm assuming some of their budget is already committed, even if not already spent.
I think most of it's committed to general maintenance.
Yeah, well, and also,
Upkeep.
to upkeep, but to lifeguards that have to be paid, they've already
That
been
is a
hired, and we
separate
have a
item,
contract.
that is a separate item on the
Is
budget.
it?
Yeah.
So, in all fairness.
Okay, no, that's fair.
We don't
Like,
under-
Your mowing contractor, they got.
Yes, yeah, we have a lot of things, and we have different things that have been set into motion.
Right.
In last year, we spent money, part of our budget in last year. And then the second half to finish those things was in this budget. But what I wanna ask you, when you say spent down, do you mean spent down on the problem or spent down on everything?
Okay, so there's something that was thrown around last year, and we would have to ask the current finance committee what their view on it is. But when a reserve fund transfer request was made, it's my recollection that the finance committee asked, is the account really spent down? Is it at zero? Because we only transfer to accounts that have been depleted.
Mhm.
But if you spend the whole budget on this tree work, and that's your extraordinary and unforeseen expense, and now your account's spent down and you wanna do another movie night, which I think is a great thing, the finance committee might say, and I can't speculate on exactly what they will do, but if we choose to go with the reserve fund request, it's up to the discretion of the finance committee. They also only have $30,000 for the whole
I
year.
understand, we're talking about 25,000.
So,
It's just in the department.
yeah,
And it could come in lower than that, but the job could go easier, things could open up and be a lot messier.
So just for my sense of clarity, the Bidwell Park estimate that's on here is for trees that are already down.
Already down
And need
or
to be
hanging.
cleared away.
and-
The community center estimate is for the remaining stumps. The fallen bits have been cleared, but we're trying to get rid of the standing remains.
Right, the immediate danger to life and property at community centers relatively stable.
So this is because I have no sense of this. If we wanted to wait, if we wanted to clean those up, but we wanted to wait till we could get the monies to do it, to plan for doing it, is that something that can wait? What is the sense of urgency about those trees?
Well, if there's hangers or anything, the town's taking liability if it comes out and hits somebody.
Okay, and so that's what I'm asking, are there a lot of those, or is it just they'll be?
I honestly haven't had 5 minutes to stop that.
Okay,
yeah, Bidwell Park is a mess.
no, I meant the community center specifically, I figured these ones already,
That's
we know that
barricaded
they're-
right off over there.
Right.
Lori Shaw of the community center.
Yeah, may I ask what the projected expense would be to clear up all of those trees at the community center that are potentially dangerous?
25,600.
$5,600.
Thank you.
Jerry?
Tom and I were talking, and would the select board have a problem if we close down Bidwell Park right now for safety? Could you
It
put
is anyway.
barricades and some signs and we're just gonna close Bidwell Park for now?
There is a barricade right now, which Jim and the highway department put up last week.
So until this gets settled, which might not be till next year's budget, the way it looks, Bidwell Park can stay closed. That's the way it's gonna have to work out. But we don't even have 25,000.
Right.
We
There's,
probably had at the most 18. So I could.
the only thing I would caution on that is that people ignore signs and barricades. And
I
there is,
understand that, and part of that road is a public road where Slade, Mrs. Slade, Karen Slade has to get into her house.
right,
That is clear.
that's
correct?
plenty of stuff.
Okay, and in this last storm, here's another question for you. To me, it looks like that road is pretty well eroded going down to Bidwell Park.
Right.
So I know that is not tree removal, but is that your obligation as the highway department to maintain the road going down to Bidwell Park? Clarify.
I don't have money budgeted for that.
Okay.
Okay. If in the event one of the budget lines comes in under an anticipated cost, let's say, for instance, it took less gravel on a certain road
Right.
project, we may be able to use that.
So we should think about adding that in, if it's not in your budget,
Right.
to fix that road as part of our budget also.
Well, that's the
Moving
question,
forward,
Jerry, is whose budget is it
Well,
going
that's what I
to
don't know, man.
right?
That's what I'm asking.
Moving forward, it is parks.
Right.
Project.
Yeah, here's the Mass General Law, right? Powers and duties of Board of Park Commissioners. Such boards may lay out and improve public parks, make rules for their use in government, appoint all necessary engineers, surveyors, clerks, and other officers, including the police force, to act in such parks, define their powers and duties and fix their compensation, and do all acts needful for the proper execution of their powers and duties. They shall have the authority given to the mayor, aldermen, selectmen, road commissioners, and tree warden respectively by section 7 of chapter 84 and by chapter 87 in places under their jurisdiction. Subject to appropriation, such boards shall also have the power to conduct park programs and recreation activities at places other than such public parks. So the way I read it is that any power that the select board would have, or that the director of operations would have through the select board, or that the tree warden would have, if it's in a park, the park commissioners have jurisdiction. But we also read the other part about tree wardens, where the park commissioners could potentially ask for the assistance of of the tree warden. So I guess, I don't think we're gonna figure it out tonight necessarily, but now we're all on the same page that we need to figure out who has the authority over each tree, whether it's standing or fallen or hanging. How is it going to be paid for? And if the money isn't allocated already, where is that gonna come from? Is it gonna be a reserve fund transfer request? Is it gonna be a special town meeting, or is it gonna be an annual town meeting? I don't think it's out of the picture for a reserve fund transfer request, the way I understand it, but that's up to the finance committee. And I don't think some of these things are out of the picture for a special town meeting.
I mean,
Because-
we're essentially talking about $50,000.
Yeah.
Right, when you consider both places, which are both town properties, whether they're under the jurisdiction of parks or they're under the jurisdiction of the community center, they're owned by the town and in one way or another managed by the town. It's $50K, right? That's 50, really 51.2.
Right, and that's an estimate based on.
Right, of
what-
course, and it might be a little more, it might be a little less, you don't know, but that's special town meeting territory, that's me. Like when you were talking about $5,000, I'd say it makes sense to just go to the finance committee and see if they were willing to do a reverse fund transfer, because it is an unexpected, extraordinary event. But $50,000 worth of
So
work is.
while we're on the subject, maybe it makes sense in our budgeting processes to have some money built in for this.
And I,
Don't get any
I
better.
agree, no, it's probably gonna be I mean, you can't, the problem is, you can't predict when it's going to happen. You know that it's going to, but maybe it'll be this year, maybe it'll be 5 years,
I
but
think
to
to some-
not plan for it seems unwise.
I think to some degree, once you get to a certain point, there's probably MEMA and FEMA money available. You'd have to declare
We
state
did,
of
by the
emergency
way,
and all that.
ask, we
And in this
reached
case,
out to the
probably
committee's
not.
office, and apparently, there isn't FEMA money even for Stockbridge, and they've got hit that works.
Right.
Which kind of surprised me, to be honest, but,
There may be a threshold.
or it could be that the state ran out of money, but this is July, what the
But
heck?
in the meantime, though, when there are certain things that need to happen in order to get your roads open, get your power back on, and those things are very costly. This is small potatoes, compared to what it could be.
Yeah.
And so we need to have a plan for what to do in cases like that, worst case scenario.
Yeah. I agree.
Mary Maycook, did you have a?
Thank you. Yes. I can't hear every single thing you're saying, but I get in the gist of what's happening with the parks, the trees, the community center, and just wanted to make sure you know. I think it was previously stated that our budget is $11,349. That's capped, and we've already spent over 2,700. So we're already down to about 8,000 because of the tent and the mowing. So that 8,000 is going to last us till June 30th.
So, and I think it's pretty clear that we're dealing with very different funding sources, whether it's the tree warden budget, the highway department budget, the park commission budget, the community center budget. It's not entirely clear to me what comes out of what at the moment. I have some general ideas, and maybe in the future we can work it into the budget that storm damage subline in highway operations kind of is a number that can take care of all the town properties, and maybe we don't wanna do that. Maybe we wanna have a larger park commission tree budget, or up the general account, or something like that. The community center is a little bit different because it's on the revolving fund. I don't wonder though if it's legal and it makes sense to keep most of the storm damage cleanup money in the highway operations budget, because it's a much larger budget and maybe more flexible depending on where the problem is.
Right. And just to touch on that storm damage, we did not spend a lot of that until the later part of the winter in this past fiscal year. And it was winter storm related cleanup that really took a lot of it. and chewed it up. We used some of it for, when we removed some of the logs, you guys took on some of that yourself. We might have used some of the tree warden budget to finish
In the spring.
what we did in the springtime for parks. So it kind of came from a little bit everywhere, so if there's another funding source to deal with this issue, and maybe it is special town meeting, to me, it makes sense to leave the money already budgeted in the storm cleanup used for, like I said, storm cleanup, things that sort of require more of an emergency action.
And I mean, has there been, like, I know in the past, there've been like washouts on the base of Griswold because of the hill and other situations like that. Is that usually coming out of storm damage or?
To some degree it does, yes.
Okay.
We're putting a lot of money into Wellman Road this week.
Right.
With gravel and some stone, and most of that stone work that replaces our inventory, that money will come out of storm.
Looking forward, right, I mean, there's two issues, right? Well, or maybe more than two, but there's the issue of trying to pay for the tree work for what just came down in a storm. And then there's, I think it's important for us to think about how we wanna plan going forward, because, and I'm not sure municipal budgets are so weird in what they allow you to sort of, for lack of a better word, hold over. You know, and there's a whole stabilization issue in a way, like storm damage, you could call it a stabilization. I would think of it as, in my head, it would be like a reserve fund, but that's not the right legal word.
Well, I
Where you would
think,
have money set aside in the event of, there's like the issue of planning to deal with trees that you know are a problem versus this sort of situation and having money there, so if this were to happen again, we know where to go to pull the money.
Yeah. We need some clarity on who's responsible for what. I don't think it's any of our faults that there's some, I mean, it's complicated once you start thinking about it. And because what budget is it coming out of? Like, for instance, when you read about the parks commissioners, it almost seems like the park commissioners, in some ways, the community center property is kind of like a public park in some ways. I'm not fully clear on what properties, what town-owned properties the park commission is responsible for and which ones it aren't. It seems like there's some that are very clear, right? The beach, Green Park, Bidwell Park. But I don't know about the park up at Blue Hill Road in 23, which is a kind of more of a memorial, and the community center property, which the community center committee has mostly been taken care of.
You can add Brewer Pond Park.
Brewer Pond Park. Once we get a sense of that, we can figure out who's paying for what. I know the tree warden probably has places he wants to take care of preventative.
There's a lot of ash dying because of the Emerald ash sword.
Yeah.
The last time John was here last fiscal year, or the last time, it was basically every tree he took down was an ash tree, other than some random dead ones, but yeah, we're gonna, I mean, it's unbelievable how much the ash are dying. And it's gonna eat the budget up so fast, it's not even, it's ridiculous.
So I have some money planned in my outdoor services account to deal with some of the ash. I know that, you know, there's a lot of sign of dieback, your center pond on the Torrico Road. Coming up there on the right side, there's an office stand ash there, it's in real bad shape. There's another stand on Blue Hill Road. In here at the Appalachian Trail, let's say, from like 159
Just looking at
up to, you know, to the farm. So I've been planning on sort of seeing it in the future there, and of course, I'm sure a lot of Miles' budget's based on that as well.
Don't know if it's something, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Yeah, Mickey, Miles, you go.
I don't know if it's something to look into, but I know, in the past, I've done through the company that I work for, like days, volunteer days, with all the tree companies come in and volunteer a day, and they do a class or something they work half a day and do a lunch and then do a class the rest of the half a day. Maybe it's something to look into on Bidwell Park. if we get that set up or something,
Yeah,
maybe it will cut back on some of the work that can be done, the budget that has to be spent.
It's really good.
Nikki?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and this, you've gone past it, but I just want to put it in your minds. If you can't go for the reserve funds, except if you've spent your money, but you have spent your money because it's been budgeted for certain things. And because you all got a letter from me, and it states that I think that the park has to be taken care of. I mean, that has been neglected. So you take care of that's part of your budget is this year, is you gotta spend that $8,000 or whatever it is to put the ballpark back into usable thing. I looked at that last week when I left here and I was astounded. I mean, I had gone to, I don't think maybe it was taken care of since I was last year, 100 years ago. But, right, it's just been neglected, and what's happened in the past is the Parks Commission relied on individuals who went in and fixed it. Such as the select board chair's father, like Rick Milkey. Guys just fixed it, went in with their own rototillers and put some dirt and did whatever. But it really needs to be taken care of, and it needs to be taken care of on a regular basis by the Parks Commission. So my thought is that you can say your money is spent because this is what you have budgeted, this is what you've got your $17,000 for, is for this, it's $8,000 to fix the park. And then you got a line, you get to the bottom and you're probably $3,000 short anyway. So you don't have in your budget extra money for this tree damage, and that's why you could go for reserve funds. But I really think going for a special meeting and doing both of these properties is the idea.
Yeah, so here's maybe what we'll leave on if everyone's intent. We're going to continue to work to figure out what work, is urgent, what preventative work should really be done, what budgets it can come out of, and if we're going to need to call a special town meeting, then obviously that's something that the select board would do, depending. It seems like the money's probably not there for the work that needs to be done, and it's probably not even there in the reserve fund. But we'll continue, we're not gonna take any actions tonight. But we will continue to keep you updated and let us know, let's communicate as we work towards figuring out who's responsible for what and how it's getting paid for. It sounds like the urgent stuff that shut down roads or was threatening to life or property is taken care of. So we're clear of that, but there is a lot of cleanup that could be done.
I have two questions. The first one is, so forgive me my ignorance here, but it seems like the revolving fund that's set up for the community center was really meant to operate the community center. The town owns the property, right? So, I mean, I don't think there's any way we can expect that their budget's gonna accommodate cleaning that up preventively or otherwise, right? That part seems sure. The question would then be whether when we go forward into the next fiscal year, I think we need to think about how we wanna plan, like, do we wanna look at all of the properties as I don't have the answer, I'm asking the question. Even though the Parks Commission is a separate entity, those properties are still owned by the town. And I sort of feel like it makes more sense to, as a town, try to come up with a plan for how to deal with issues like this when they arise, because the wind doesn't care whether it's a park or a road or anything else, right? I mean, and it still in the end comes under the purview of the town, even if different groups are overseeing different properties. So, and I would love to also, like, I don't think we're gonna solve this tonight, and I think this is ultimately should be a conversation with the finance committee in terms of how to plan for it, but from the perspective of, operations, would you see that if we needed a pool of money to deal with situations like this, is it something that you would say should be in the storm damage, or should that be left for like road washouts and it be some other specific pool of money?
I would say that it would be a separate account. It's much bigger, similar to, I don't want to say the wrong word, but free cash or one of those.
Or stabilization fund or something. It needs the right
I
name,
think
right?
stabilization is right. And I agree with you, that none of what happened here is any different than if the community center needs a roof, or if it needs a heating system, or the town hall needs a heating system. That's all from town meeting items. Those are all large items that need to be out on our capital.
I'll throw another little wrinkle into this. Excuse me, Jerry. Although we think of the launch area as part of the town beach, that's actually state-run and state-maintained, the launch area. Our legal counsel has reinforced that. Without knowing that, last fiscal year, we went ahead with Sean and resurfaced it. But technically, that's a state responsibility. And we therefore need to keep that open to anybody who wants to use it. So although we consider it part of the town beach, it's really a state property.
Oh, Lori.
And Susan, I really appreciate your understanding that the community center budget is for the operation of the center. We've had the same budget for 5 years because it totally depends upon the income from Valley Valley. So we've really been cutting corners everywhere just to stay within that budget. And I really can't see that there would be any way we'd be able to come up with any money to pay for $25,000 worth of work.
And I don't think you should have it.
What Jim was saying, there are structures on town beach and there are structures on the ball field, there's a fencing, there's a shed on the ball field, there's a shed at the town beach, there are different structures. If we had a tremendous windstorm and something happened to those structures, to say that they could come out of the Parks Department budget to fix, that would be every year, we'd have no budget to do anything with. So I think in our future budgets, once you've decided who's gonna pay for these different things, if you decide that the Parks Department would have to pay,
Yeah.
then we should have a line item in our budget, not that we can spend on just anything.
Yeah.
But would go towards certain damage that would be unforeseen
Well, let's hope that
by a disaster.
let's hope that kind of damage might be covered by insurance. But yeah, we run into the problem of these natural events, you never know, and you don't wanna have money in each budget, depending, and like we said, a lot of times, if it wasn't such a severe storm that affected so many town properties, it might be a more common sense thing to go to the reserve fund and request a transfer, go to the finance committee. But one thing about the Parks Commission is you don't wanna give up your power, of money, because then you're giving up your power.
We're not saying
to
give
control the
up our
parks.
power of money at all. That wasn't my point. My point was that the years, we're here a year. We're a new Parks Commission. When the budget was settled last year, the meeting was called for 9 o'clock. I get there at 9 o'clock after the budget was gone. So everybody said, oh, we did this last year, and they signed off. The Parks Commission budget's gonna be a lot different this year because we know what's going on and we know what's been neglected for years.
Yeah.
And a certain thing like the ball field, it's a rude awakening. We were under the impression that wasn't as big a problem, but it is a big problem. So that has to be addressed, and we understand that. But there are other things also that were never addressed, and we don't want to let them run down so bad that they become a problem, and we're first finding this out.
Yeah, well, I think you're doing a good job by being active and you're learning about problems that need to be fixed and you're working towards solving them.
Right.
And as far as budgeting, well, we can call a special town meeting for the emergency,
No, I understand.
more things
We understand.
unforeseen. But we can, during next budget season, let's just keep track of all the different projects and we can have that discussion.
Thank you, that's all.
But other than that, I think we will conclude this discussion tonight. And we're going to continue to figure out what work is maybe gonna be done at the community center and at Bidwell Park, especially those two areas. How it will get paid for and who's making those decisions. And if the select board needs to call a special town meeting. So we'll have those discussions, continued on, but I think we're at a good place tonight.
You guys have anything else to throw in?
Okay, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Anything else you can fight after you?
Yes, is painting the lines in the budget? I know
It is.
For, on the road?
It is, new contractor on the Franklin County bid program.
Yeah.
A little more cumbersome than previous contractors. They were given an ultimatum 2 days ago. And they responded last night, saying,
For Monterey. Okay, great, perfect. That's a problem solved.
Ahead of it.
Yeah.
But the Franklin County, organization, purchasing organization we're involved with, actually, awarded a contract to an alternate now. So we were getting ready to go to the alternate.
Oh, gosh.
But they came up, and I think that, 3 weeks from now, it's reasonable.
Good, yeah. I would have asked you,
I more reasonable than 3 months that we wait.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to ask, so, good, thank you.
Do you have anything else for us?
I think what they do is they come from out east and they wait until they have
Enough,
communities in for the same general area. I sort of get that, but it doesn't mean that you can put everything off. So
Any other questions for us while you're here?
I got a million, but one at a time.
Yeah, good to meet you, Miles, as well.
Yep, and sorry it had to wait for a boo.
You didn't wait long, and you just got elected, right? So, 3 weeks and you're out.
It's just, you hate that it happens like it's like meeting someone at a funeral. You wish it could come under better circumstances. So.
Well, there we go. Right off the bat, we've had a number of questions and trees people want us to look at. And kind of,
It's a lot of trees.
chapter 87, we were looking at allows for him to ask me an official deputization of, but it does allow for him to ask me to look at some of his actions during the day when somebody might be up to meet with us. So it's actually turning out to be a pretty decent thing.
That's awesome.
Rebecca?
Now that you're here, I just want to tell you how great Beartown Mountain Road has been this past winter, and the work you did cleaning the culverts this week was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll pass that along to the crew and everyone's working hard on here.
Yeah, thank you.
And as I understand it, a lot of the, from what you said, the work that National Grid did, even though it made a lot of people unhappy, so many trees come down, this could have been even worse.
Yeah, so the stuff that did impact National Grid was on, the single phase areas, which it wasn't part of that big campaign that they had, it was all on 3-phase work. And it was relatively small potatoes compared to what the rest of it was. Couple things on Main Road that you probably never would imagine would have come down, but the wind hit them just right and they did. That said, in that area from, say, the library of Brook Bend all the way out to roughly 520, even Bidwell Road, I think that it could have been impacted much heavier if a lot of those trees hadn't been removed, because there were a bunch of ash trees and a bunch of really old trees out there. There was one really big old tree that was there that, I believe the potential was there. And again, who would ever predicted that all the trees would go apart would come down?
Right, again, yeah.
Again,
A month later. So.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and sorry to take so much of your evening.
We'll get a plan together.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
So we made it to new business and we have no town administrator items. Item number 2, Katrina Fitzpatrick resigned from the finance committee. We'll just make that announcement. And item number 3 is the appointment process to fill the vacant finance committee seat. So with there being a vacant seat, the select board can appoint someone to fill it until the next election.
Is it until the next election or until that?
Until the next election.
Until the next election.
So it would only be, I thought it was to fulfill the rest of the term, but it's just till the next election.
Yes, so
Would
for
that then-
instance, in New Marlboro, actually, they had a select board member resign. They called a special election. And the seats that were appointed by the select board are up in that special election. So if we had had time when we called our special election, if we appointed someone to the finance committee, that seat would have been up because there's an election. That's my understanding. But our next regularly scheduled election, barring the resignation of a select board member, is in May of 2023, right after town meeting.
So that they have to be spaced, so what happens? Does that end up being since Katrina would have been up in 2024, does that end up being a 1-year term or a 4-year term?
Yes, it becomes
A
a
1-year term.
Yeah, the staggering remains the same. We appoint until the next election, at which point the election is for the remaining years, the remaining term.
So next year, we would have 2 finance committee seats up, one for 1 year and one for 3 years.
Yes.
Okay.
It's thankfully not too confusing. You get to a bigger board like the planning board, where the seats are staggered and there's a different number of seats during certain years, so it's not too confusing. The question is, how are we going to go about appointing this seat? I think the general process, barring something crazy, and we actually don't have any other open seats. Last year, we regularly had open seats on the park commission and the planning board. And we just never made them because there was no interest, nothing stopped us from making, and we did make one planning board appointment, but right now, this is the only open elected position. And also it's on a 3-member board that plays a large role in the budget process. What I would envision is advertising, that we are looking for people interested for a certain amount of time, and then reviewing the applications or letters of interest.
Okay.
And we just have to make a decision at that point.
So I, because I knew this was gonna come up, I've been trying to talk to people to see if anybody knew of candidates. So far, Rebecca Wolin emailed me saying she would be willing to serve. Eileen Marcus also emailed me. I can forward you her email because she actually talked about her credentials. For that job. I talked to Stuart Litwin, but he is not willing to serve.
Yeah.
Those are the people I found that even were interested in any way, so far. I don't know if you have done the same. I don't think it's a bad idea to advertise, it's just sometimes you need to beat the bushes a little.
Yeah, I ran into Roger Tryon, who
I
said
figured
he'd be interested. I think, given that we have more than one interested person, the most fair way to do this would be to have them fill out the appointment request form that we created or updated last year. It's on the select board webpage under appointment request application, which is a fillable form, or we have it printed out.
It's on the select board page, you said?
Yeah. It's just called appointment request application or article. And I think it's a simple form, reason for the long answers or reason for applying and relevant experience. But that might help us, consider applicants on a level playing field.
And somebody serve on 2 elected,
Mickey, can someone serve on 2 elected
Board
boards?
commission.
I gotta get the boards out there.
So
I believe they can.
we usually with ethics law, if your second position is elected, kind of everything, it's my understanding, everything is okay, because people elected, you know, you're on the ZBA, which is elected, and the select board, which is elected, everyone knew Susan was on the
Yeah,
ZBA.
it's out in the open.
This is an appointment to an elected board, it's a little bit different. I think we're aware that Rebecca Woolen is on the Board of Library Trustees, and she was appointed, well, actually, the select board appointed her at the request of the library trustees at the end of last year, and then she ran for the remaining term, the remaining part of the term, or maybe she was in the
It was a full term that she ran for, because she ran with me.
Yeah,
And I
Yeah,
think
I guess I could think of it, but the ballot looked like.
Eileen Marcus is appointed to me to the transfer station committee, but,
and the parade committee.
and the parade committee. It's hard for me to see a conflict of interest in any way with those things, but I mean, I suppose we have to consider it.
We can look at, look at.
Roger's serving on the planning board,
Which is elected.
That's so far the only 3 that we mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I think what we should do is, if we get, so people have already shown interest. If we can get them to fill out the form, I think
Do we want
there's,
to put a date on that?
absolutely, yeah. So today is July 27th. I don't think, given that we already have interested parties, I don't think it's the type of thing that we need to advertise for months.
I would agree. In
Probably.
fact, I'm not even sure, I mean, I have my questions about if we put it on the website, who sees it?
Yeah.
That's my concern. Like, I have no problem with putting it up there.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that putting it up there is adequate to reach people who don't regularly look at the town website.
Well, I think we just wanna be open that we have a vacancy and we're looking to make an appointment. And if you're interested, please let us know. I think in the next couple of weeks, we could make that decision. And at the end of the day, if there's more than one person who is interested, it's just a select board decision, and we will try to do our best to do whatever we think is best for the town.
Okay.
So, but what if we said, please let us know by August 5th? And then we could,
That's only a week.
Yeah, that's a week from Friday, right?
wait for Friday. I mean, we already have people who are interested, it's not like we need to.
Oh, then you're saying we could have a look at them and talk about it on the 10th?
Yeah, that would be my proposal. We let people know that the deadline for expressing interest to the board is the 5th. I frankly, I think that we should get them to fill out the appointment request application, whether in hard copy or on the online, just to compare apples to apples as much as possible.
I'm
But
just thinking, if this gets posted by the TA on the 1st, that only gives 4 days. I mean, we can, it's easy enough to ask Roger, Rebecca, and Eileen to fill out that form since they've already expressed interest.
yeah,
But as far as reaching other people, if it doesn't get posted to the 1st, is 4 days really enough? She's like, I don't think so. I don't.
yeah, I mean, I guess it's,
I don't know where else to.
You know, sometimes you just get wound up in a lot of things in your life and you don't look at something for a few days and say, oh, I could have died, why did they want to do that?
but I mean, but look, but frankly, I mean, we're not, there's a lot, will someone please be the ADA coordinator, right? Like, and the fence, we need 2 fence viewers. There's people who are willing to fill the role. I'm not opposed to posting a little bit longer, but I just don't think, and this is the other thing that happens, typically when we post and we're looking for people for the town charter committee, usually it's right away when we talk about it, or right by the deadline. If we make
I
it,
was making right away and the deadline at the same time.
Yeah, right, might as well.
we can post it 2 weeks, I don't know, we're gonna be getting a 3rd member of the select board, August 23rd.
And I'm not suggesting we leave it indefinitely.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking an extra week because.
Yeah, I know.
They said it would only be on the thing for 4 days, it's kind of.
Yeah, what if we would say August
By the 12th,
August 12th?
because that would give us 3 days till the 17th, or, 4 days till the 17th.
Yeah, so we'll set a deadline of August 12th. In fact, I'll motion that the select board advertise the vacant finance committee seat, which we will appoint. And we will accept applications for that seat until August 12th.
Okay,
And we will consider those applications on August 17th. That's my motion.
second,
Any further discussion, comment? Call a vote. Susan,
yes.
Justin, yes, and the motion carries. So that's what we'll do. We'll accept applications for that seat till August 12th, and we'll make a decision. Or if it takes longer than a week to make a decision, then it does. But we can discuss interest on the 17th.
Okay.
And see where it goes. I think it's good that we have people.
Yeah.
It's good that we have all of our elected seats filled, until now, a couple of resignations, but, full planning board, which I think is the first time in a while. And, so it's good, and we'll make this appointment and the special election for the select board member, and then we'll really be filled up until the library board of trustees. If they're ending their, what happened last year.
I certainly hope so, that's why I'm kind of concerned about Rebecca.
Okay,
She's a good member.
But that does segue me into this one thing. Is it true, I believe that the clerk keeps the list of appointments and is the one who checks to see if they've done the COI, and this is a weird question, but are they also required to do OML training? Or is that, is that not a requirement, anyone appointed
yeah,
to a board?
so I'm trying to remember, there's a difference. Both are required. If you are appointed or elected to a board, you have to complete the conflict of interest course and the open meeting law
Right,
course.
if you're elected,
If you are appointed or elected. to a
appointed
board.
or elected,
Yeah, because they would apply to both.
right, I would think.
What was the question? Oh, one, I can't remember which is which, but one needs to be completed before your first meeting, and one, I think you have 14 days.
But it might be, like, just because we just had all this round of appointments and we're kind of coming to the end of it, it might be good to get a kind of update from the clerk on, was everybody sworn in?
Yeah.
Did they fulfill both the COI and the OML training, just to make sure we're all like
Yeah,
up to date and everything's where it's supposed to be.
my sense is that people probably haven't done that.
Well, that's why we need to, like, if she goes over the list and updates us, then we can send out little reminders saying, in order to serve, you need to do these
Yeah.
things. That's why you have to do it.
Yes.
So can we?
I'm behind in mine.
Pardon? Yeah,
I'm kidding.
I'm behind in my security, online security training.
Yes, I'm behind in mine as well.
Would you be willing to request the clerk to give us a
Yeah, I can ask.
updated report on swearing in COI and OML of all appointed and elected people?
I've been spending too much time on book sale.
Almost over, almost over.
And then I have to start with getting everything straightened up, so I have to do reading after that. That took me like 6 weeks last year.
All right, I'll ask the clerk for an update on those two mandatory trainings and who has completed or not, and go from there. If it's an elected person who hasn't done it, I mean, they need to be a legally participating member. I don't know what our jurisdiction on that would be. Which brings us to the next.
Well, but I don't know if we have jurisdiction, but at the very least, the clerk reminding them that they need to fulfill that obligation in order to serve would not be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But so, and also, I'd like to know that they were all sworn in.
Yes, and I'll ask for swearing in.
Yeah, I swore. Me too.
Town Charter Committee interest, so I know that we posted the website, I think we're probably gonna have to table this until next week to figure out what exactly we're going to do.
Have we had any?
We need to talk with Melissa, I think. I don't
Okay.
think that we have, because anytime someone fills out the appointment request application, we
Yeah,
get a copy of it. But sometimes people send an email or drop off something in hard copy. And we need to also figure out, there's 3 classes of people. One is the 4 people who have been appointed for 1-year appointment. There were people who expressed interest, and we were supposed to, and I don't know if it was Melissa or I think I volunteered for it, but I'm not 100% sure. We're supposed to check with the people who expressed interest, are they still interested? We're supposed to check with the people who've been appointed, are they still wanting to serve? And then if there's any new people, so let's do that next week, we'll come back
Okay.
with a update, but we'll table that for this week. So we had nothing particularly mentioned under mail and correspondence, but we have received a couple of letters.
Right, so one was from the police chief,
Yeah, so
which was sort of raised earlier, but I wasn't sure what the.
Gareth, why don't, since we just got that, I'll put that on next week's agenda.
Okay.
Gareth just had a question about the council contact policy, and if more or less the police chief could be exempt and could go have a direct line of access to council. Steve Moore of Monterey News was wondering if the select board is interested in reviving select board coroner.
So so I just wanted to run a thought by you, that when, I know that there have been issues about how that was used in the past. I think it could be an interesting platform for us to, I don't think we just have to like have our personal views there.
Yeah.
Right, in my view or whatever. It would be an interesting way to bring up issues to raise, to get community involved in a way. So, for example, so with increase, and just using tonight, with increasing storms, we know that there are going to be storm events that cause damage. We can't predict when they'll happen or how bad they'll be, but we know they're gonna happen, and the town should be doing some kind of planning for them. Here's different ways that we could consider trying to approach that problem. We'd like to hear from you on which way you think might be best for the town and why. Like, we don't necessarily have to just say what our view is, we could say things we're considering or different views about a particular issue and wanting to solicit opinion, but it's a way to like touch base with people. We don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't, it doesn't even have to be a political thing, it can be a, like, okay, so here's another issue, what do you think we should do about it? Like,
That sort of would have been covered when we had a reporter that took,
but we don't.
So
Yeah.
it's something like that, I think is an excellent idea.
Are you interested in being the reporter?
God, no.
I
I keep saying, I'm gonna not have to come for meetings soon, maybe. I
well,
mean,
so.
and I won't be here on the 17th, okay, I just know that.
So there's a couple things, I think, by doing the public posting of agendas, holding the regular meetings, that invites public participation. I think Steve Moore's email did get me thinking. And one thing about the paper, and it's not, one thing about the paper is it reaches quite a few people, not everybody, but quite a few people. Another thing about the paper is it has a delay of a couple weeks depending on the situation. one thing that we do have more readily at our fingertips is the people who sign up for town alerts.
Mhm.
And I think in some instances, we could even email out people who have signed up for town alerts, and it could also go on the Monterey.
Yeah. I don't think it has to be unique to one or the other.
The other question it brings up is, obviously, we are allowed to share our own opinions, just as individuals.
Right.
But if we come out with something as a board, it has a different weight to it, which we also have the ability to do. And
It just can get onerous drafting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, especially since we're limited to open meetings, for review and discussion. But, something like the telephone issue on Verizon, and I think you even went a step further, you mailed that right out to people.
Didn't get great response. Did get some
No.
response though.
But something like that, we could email, and it could end up in the Monterey News, and you're reaching, maybe there's some overlap, but different people.
Yeah.
And,
Another example that I was thinking of would be, as you know, I'm on the transportation committee, and one of the things that we're talking about, and probably will be talking to our municipal coordinator, Susan Wade. She has another MAC, Municipal Assistance Coordinator, about is the possibility of doing pay-as-you-throw, converting to a pay-as-you-throw system. So one thing I could do would be with the transportation committee to write an article about what that is and why we would consider it, what the pros are and what the cons might be, to just tell, not because we're going to do it, but because we're considering it. And I think I'd rather start talking to people before we proceed with the plan, to let people think about it and then come back to us, because people really like to be surprised with stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, I see it as a way to put stuff forward at the beginning of the process, rather than on the decision side of the process.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as an either or, like with the meetings. I see it as another way to sort of use it as an opportunity to get people thinking about things that may be coming, but aren't there yet.
There's something about having the paper, because you can leave it, I mean, I do, I have an island in other kitchens for the summer. And just leaving it there, and oh yeah, what was that? Yeah, I wanted to read that, I might want to say something about it, because it seems to be more, for me, it's more visual to see something like that.
And you can go back and look at it again.
Yeah, and again, and again, and again.
Right.
so I'm thinking of, I'll put that as well on next week's agenda, so we could formally respond to Steve and maybe think on it. And, like I said, I'm certainly open to engaging the community in that way. And like I said, also using that function that we have on the website, and then it can also go in the Monterey News, and whether it's updates or cheating, whatever it may be. And then also, I did want to update you that I did get a response from Donna about the liability question about.
Volunteer labor.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I will
that was gonna-
forward it to you,
Okay.
but I'll read it off in short. Hi, Justin, sorry for the delay on this. I was waiting to discuss issues with my partner on all matters of procurement, and she was on vacation. Sorry. Attached is a form that you can use for simple projects such as painting or clearing trails. Concerns will differ depending on the scope of the project. Before agreeing to any volunteer assistance, the volunteer should sign the attached form, and you should check with Maya on your insurance needs. Jenny does not see any procurement concerns. She did raise one potential issue on prevailing wage. And this actually kind of relates to what Miles was talking about right now. If you have a contractor who is volunteering to do work for the town, the Division of Labor Standards has taken inconsistent positions on whether the contractor's workers must be paid prevailing wage. In that instance, I recommend that we discuss the particular matter before agreeing to accept the volunteer work. So let's say this is just hypothetical, but if a tree contractor volunteered to do work for the town, I imagine he would be paying his employees, I don't actually know, but I
It
guess,
might be, or they might all be volunteering.
They all be
well, there's some question because of how prevailing wage laws work, and thanks to Mickey, I did go to a prevailing wage class last year. We had a minor run-in with the state on the prevailing wage law last year. But, and in that prevailing wage class, right, what it's doing is prevailing wage laws in theory protect the worker. And so if the contractor is saying, I'm volunteering my time and all my employees are, but the idea of prevailing wage laws is protecting the worker.
And I suspect, I think when like the banks do their volunteer days, I think it's a paid day for them. So I'm betting that the tree company is actually.
But not only would they need to, depending, and we would talk to Donna if this ever came up, but not only would they need to pay their workers, but they might need to pay them prevailing wage. So a lot of companies that do public and private work,
Okay,
You-
have different ways.
there's a very specific, very specific wage.
Very, very different.
And like they might get paid, and it depends if they're doing road work. There's a rate that the guy who's, or the woman, or like the person
Right.
who's doing the flag versus the person operating the excavator versus the person operating the steamroller versus, you should look into it
And
sometimes.
if they change jobs, in other words, if they're working the steamroller one time
Yeah.
for an hour, and then they go on to another piece of machinery, they get paid a different rate.
Good lord.
Yeah,
So
Oh,
it's-
bookkeeping on that must be a
It's-
nightmare.
Well, so you get these things called certified pay timesheets.
Yeah.
And they're completed weekly and they have that exact division and it's very,
Everybody on the job is supposed to know it's supposed to be posted what the rates are, and you're supposed to know. And I know contractors who said, the state or the feds used to come around and say, do you know what you should be paying because you're running this machinery?
but more so than, it's my understanding, more so than the state coming around, it's actually unions.
Oh,
Yeah.
the unions are always there.
Because, well, when the unions, especially when the workers on the job are not union workers, and they still need to be prevailing wage, but unions may not like that, and so they may go and try and catch any slip ups. From non-union workers, and there, if you get a chance, I think they're probably still doing them, and they may be recorded on YouTube, there's a prevailing wage class that the Attorney General's office does. And it's maybe not so much in the select board's purview, other than that, everything in the town, it's to some level, the select board is the top of the chain,
It's kind of good to know about it, though.
But yeah, it's kind of good, because if we have a project going on, it is our responsibility, the town's responsibility, to make sure that the prevailing wage laws are being followed. They're very complicated, and we're not
They
lawyers,
keep changing.
but there's,
They're changing for different jobs. You have to file your job, and these will be your prevailing wage.
but there's a couple things to look out for, like contractors will often claim that they're owner operator, but all of a sudden they have 10 owner operators, which you can't do. Because if you're an owner operator, you don't need to pay prevailing wage to yourself,
Right.
because it's protect workers. Anyways, all right, we got a little off track, but I will forward you that email from Donna. If we have follow-up questions, we can ask, but the general sense I'm getting is, since your insurance company is gonna be the one handling the claim and the liability if a volunteer gets injured, you
They're the ones
need to
who
go
have to
ask.
check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate in some ways, because I'm sure, insurance companies don't wanna be paying out claims.
Of course they don't. And there's always a question of like, if you remember when you were a kid and you were going on a field trip and you had to have your parents sign the permission slip. For the field trip, you remember these things?
Yes, I do.
Right, but the reality is that legally those things are worth like nothing, because if something happens on the field trip, the parents can absolutely sue the school district or the bus driver, or whoever the heck they want, that something happened to their kid. Even though they signed it, so like, it's kind of,
You're right.
like, I get what the concern is. At the same time, I think that in a small town, there has to be a way through this, because in a small town, volunteer labor isn't just about the actual value of that labor. It's about the people's ability to contribute to their town and to build a sense of community and connection to those things that they've worked on. And when we allow the litigation scene to become so onerous that people can no longer participate in their own community for fear of potential litigation, it really erodes a lot of connections that's really unfortunate. And I feel like we have to commit to finding a way past that problem so that we can allow people to participate in their own town. You know, that's.
But yeah, and so that's the response. We have follow-ups, you know, of course, going forward,
So Maya
Yeah,
is
we'll-
our
insurance.
insurance, our contact at the insurance provider.
Oh, so it's MIIA,
Oh, I
Yeah,
see, that's
yeah.
the,
Massachusetts it's an acronym.
Yeah, I don't know what it stands for, but I know it's an MIA.
if we needed to check with the insurance provider, we need to find out who our contact is there.
And I think more or less that's what Melissa's been doing.
Right.
But
I think that it might behoove one of us to have a conversation with them too.
yeah,
Just because sometimes the way you ask the question, you get a different answer.
I think sometimes that the insurance person comes like once a year or something, and sits down and talks to the select board. Seems to me,
I don't know.
I don't remember that.
well, I think they
happening.
stayed away from you last year.
The
Nothing personal.
The Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association.
Okay. But we could probably get a contact on that.
Yeah,
There from Alyssa and.
and I think it's just 2022 or 21st century America is the litigation.
For
and
sure.
Insurance, you know, it's unfortunate, but in some ways that kind of is how things.
And it might be that there's no way around it, I grant you, but you don't get to yes without asking, and seeing if there is a way around it seems like it could be worthwhile, but that's all.
Approved minutes of 7/20/2022, I would table, I did not get those. I
Okay,
did not get to those, but I will get to them for next week.
okay, and did you have a chance to go over, the stuff that,
The executive session questions?
no, the, policy that, Sophia sent?
Was that vacation?
Vacation and, yeah,
I did not.
Okay.
I am. So both of my parents are part-time employees, and this would directly affect the
Okay.
financial impact, which brings me to another point, which is I can use the rule of necessity to the extent that it needs to be done. But I'm thinking that
it might make
With
sense to defer that.
new
until
board
we have-
member.
yep, mhm.
On their way,
Yeah, I totally.
I
agree.
wanna hold off just because it seems very much,
Yeah.
you know.
I completely support you,
And then-
it's not that far in the future, so we totally could.
What was it about the vacation?
Yeah, about how dealing with, well, the vacation policy, like for both full-time and part-time, but so yeah, it's both. The vacation policy for full-time workers, I still think we could discuss, and I mean, we have a
Yeah.
policy, and the question really is enforcing that policy.
Well, and
How we wanna go forward.
and as she kind of laid out, the full-time employee policy, she says is heavily dictated by the law.
Right.
The part-time employee vacation policy and holiday pay, at one point in time, I had been discussing to the extent that I thought the policy wasn't going to, the policy that might be adapted wouldn't involve direct family members, but if the issue is to be really fleshed out, it has to address every town employee. And I think it just makes sense from an ethical
I
standpoint
see your point.
to wait
A month.
a month.
It's not that long, and it's been left this long, another month is gonna matter.
Yeah, and then the other thing that reminds me of was the change in title of the community center coordinator. Again, I could invoke rule of necessity, but I figured I'll just let.
A month is not that long to wait. And we also had communication from her regarding issues concerning the court.
Yes, so the two questions were, could Justin be the direct report? And when, what is the scheduling for requesting a schedule, more or less?
Yeah, and I would say not just a schedule, but a normal office hours schedule. So
Yeah.
that there were more regular, and again, I'm not opposed to some evening hours and or some Saturday hours, but I do think that I would like to see fewer flex hours and more hours during the work week, and I'd like to see those work week hours not all loaded to one end of the week.
So, and the other question that I had, and this is something we're gonna have to figure out with Sophia, but to the extent that she's the HR director, now she works for the town and is appointed, did we ever appoint her? But she's appointed by the select board.
I think that we did,
I think we did.
when we accepted her appointment from the committee.
If we did,
Signed her contract, yeah.
if we didn't, we probably should, but the point being, she's seeking guidance from the select board. If the letter is going to come from the select board, it needs to be approved by the select board, of course.
Right.
So I'm going to try, tomorrow's Thursday, so Sophia's in. I'm going to try to touch base with her to just clear that up. Is the letter coming from the HR director or from the select board? And to the extent that it's coming from the select board, of course, we would need to agree to it and sign on to it in a meeting. If it's coming from the HR director, we just are supposed to give guidance on those two questions, which is a deadline
Well, first of all, are you willing to serve as,
as the direct report, and that was the other question. And
which is a question that you have to answer.
so I did actually follow up with her and say that I'm available to be the direct report for the clerk.
Okay.
But I do think that's something that the board should decide, because I can't act on my own on that matter.
I am willing to, if you're willing to serve, I'm willing to say, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So I will, but I do wanna touch base with her as to, you know, are you acting, if you're acting in your role as HR director, you are seeking some guidance from the board. But are you asking the board, you know, obviously, it's gonna, like I said, so I will try and touch base with her about that.
But even so, I think that, whether it's coming from her or coming from us, she's asking for guidance in crafting the letter on
Yeah.
what the timeline should look like.
Yeah.
So what should the timeline look like?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, I'd like to see no more than 2 weeks.
And it might depend in part when the letter gets sent.
Right, 2
but
weeks
let's
from the
say
time it's sent. How
2
about that?
weeks, yeah.
I would also say that I think the letter should reiterate that, if the clerk has recommendations for alterations that could be made to, make the workplace more accommodating for her, that this would be an appropriate time to make those suggestions.
Yeah.
We've asked now, I think 2 or 3 times, and, you know, response has been forthcoming. At some point, without further recommendations from her as to what would work for her, I think that we can say that we've made the accommodations we can make.
Well, I'm hopeful that the human resources director can, as she has been, kind of working through that for the board, and if she has questions, are you willing to be the direct report scheduling, but I'm hoping we can rely on her professional experience and town council to navigate through the situation.
So, and I have, well, so 2 weeks from when it's mailed, you're willing to be the direct report and, perhaps reiterate the request for, if there are further alterations to the situation in town hall that she would like to see made, could you please make them so that we can consider them and either, you know, put them into play or not.
Yeah.
Does that answer Sophia's question?
Yeah.
Okay, I also feel like some stuff that's come up, recently, sort of from various fronts, makes me feel as though, trying to figure out how to phrase this. There are some processes that have been part of town hall since long before either of us were here, that strike me as, every now and then you have a process in place, but it needs to be updated.
Yeah.
And, the one that came to light recently concerns the credit cards. Specifically the Staples credit card. I don't know if there are other credit cards, but the process is remarkably confusing. And strikes me like it doesn't have to be that confusing, and it could be that there's municipal rules that require it to be done in this slightly peculiar way. But I've worked other places where there were credit cards issued to various employees. And I've never seen it handled this way, and again, it could totally be municipal and I could be off base. But it strikes me as that now that we have a firm as accountant and a firm as treasurer, they might be good people to solicit input from as to what the best practice is for handling this. So the fact that we've done it a particular way doesn't mean that's still best practice. But I'm not sure how we proceed on asking for that kind of input on whether the system needs updating.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
really just recently found out, my daughter works municipal. And I'm like, she had said something about credit card, but I never paid attention to it. So she does have a credit card that has a purchase limit to it. So like she can go to the grocery stores and buy food, which she does, shops on Saturdays and whatever. But she also just had to buy a piece of equipment, a milk cooler. And she bought other pieces of equipment. I remember she went online a couple years ago and bought a new dishwasher. And she just used her credit card. Well, this milk cooler went over her spending limit for an item, right? And she said it just became total hell to get this. And so because it became such total hell, she is not going to get this piece of equipment, which she really needs, until December, where she could have had it in September. If they hadn't made she said, it just to get somebody else to say, well, we can use my credit card because I'm the town this, and, she says, it's my department. I've always just bought things that I need from my department.
Yeah, I mean,
So you are,
certainly, I think, feel free to work or ask the treasurer and accountant. And if there's a policy that's, if we have an existing policy.
Or an existing process, it may not even be a policy, it
Yeah.
may just like, sometimes there's like, well, this is how we've done it.
Yeah.
Right, it's done this way, why? Because that's how we've done it, like, I actually don't know, it could be that we're doing it the way we have to do it. But it could also be that we're doing it the way we've always done it, whether that's a good way
Right.
to do it or not. And all I wanna determine is like, here's the thing, if a process is so confusing that with the ridiculous number of years of schooling I have, am having trouble understanding what the process is, I'm probably not the only one, right? And if problems occurred because of the complexity of the process, it might make sense to revise the process.
Yeah.
If we can. So that's all I'm trying, better to have and maybe putting in a second, check on the system to make sure those mistakes don't happen, wouldn't be bad either. So, okay, so would you like me to go ahead and I will talk to both the treasurer and the accountant about the system to see if I can find out if we have to do it that way and if they think there's a better way.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's good.
I will do that.
If that solves that, we can have comments and questions from the public, which next week we're renaming to comments and questions from Mickey Gervitz.
which one?
Next week, we're renaming to comments and questions from Mickey Jervis.
Well, I do actually have two questions that I wrote down. So was there a meeting on the property here in Town Hall with Berkshire County Retirement?
It is my understanding, was it a couple Thursdays ago?
Right, why weren't part-time employees who are in Berkshire Retirement
Yeah.
not apprised of this and invited to come to this meeting?
I think that was an oversight.
It has to be a really bad oversight, because this is something that they're really screwed around with a whole lot, and plus related to, yeah, 2/3 of them, but it just, it's really more than just inappropriate. It's not just an overlook, it's really people just ignoring that they exist and not giving them the due respect that they should have. Yeah, and one was the town treasurer, the guy. The other one was just the librarian, and Linda Hamlin. It's actually, though she doesn't get her hours here, she is in Berkshire Retirement from some other position that she holds or held. So, yeah, it's just something that happens too often, that part-time workers are third-class citizens in this town. They're not even second-class citizens. And this, they are people that are, you know, whatever you call it, into the Berkshire County Retirement, and they were just ignored and not able to come to this, knew about this meeting, to come to it and ask the questions that they have, or listen to the information that was given. So I think that's a big bad. And I don't know how you're gonna correct it.
I don't know how we're gonna correct it either, but at the very least, we can make sure that at the next yearly meeting, they're included, but that
Yeah.
doesn't fix it for this year.
And if there is a minutes from this or any report from this, then it should be given to those three people.
The other thing maybe we could do also would be to make sure that the part-time employees, since they weren't informed of that meeting, are given the contact information so that they could, at the very least, call and talk to someone there if they wanted to.
Well, I mean, they should know what was discussed here,
Yeah.
and, you know, so there must be some sort of recording minutes of it.
There may be a PowerPoint even, I don't know,
Yeah,
I
it's
wasn't,
something. Yeah,
I wasn't
I
very
just, you
aware.
know, I just heard about it, and I said, well, that's not right. The other thing that is just a curious question I would ask is of Susan, not as the select board member, but as your committee, transportation committee.
Yeah.
What happened to Tim Deming? He was supposed to be on board on Sundays, and I haven't seen him yet. I happen to know his family.
Right, I don't know, I haven't heard anything, so we haven't had a meeting since he started. I knew that he was supposed to start, but I hadn't heard that he hadn't been working, so I will shoot Jim a quick no.
Yeah, that was just, you know, curiosity. Figured I just, I kind of want to ask him, I was,
I have no idea, and Jim was on vacation, and I did not go to the dump this week.
and I'll tell you what, I know that there were big shoes to fill, but these guys didn't even come in slippers. I mean, the one sits inside and complains about the heat. And the other one will come out and, Bruce. And I know he, you know, he will address you and stuff, so, and I think I did ask him, I said, you Bruce, or I asked him his name was Bruce, I said, oh. He said, which class did you graduate from in non-average question? He actually was like one after one of my kids or one before one of my kids, something. Because all Eichsted's come from the river, don't they?
Yeah, and you know.
And I have seen, I didn't notice this week because I was in a rush because I had to get down to the library to do more work. when I went Sunday, and, but I haven't seen cars without stickers.
Cars
And they're
without
not- and they're
stickers?
Not, I saw them the first weekend, that was, the second or something, so, well, that was all right. But then, not this week, as I said, I didn't look, but the week before, I did just happen to notice the car next to me didn't have a yellow sticker, it had a blue one. I said, you don't have a sticker yet. And
So not without stickers at all,
And-
it's without current sticker.
they, just, it didn't have a current sticker on, so, I mean, they're not addressing that, so.
So we'll have to send that to, Jim, who
Yeah.
oversees that department.
So I'm happy to send off a quick note to Jim asking both about Tim and mentioning that we've seen some cars without current stickers
Yeah,
still.
and it just should be, I mean, they don't have to be mean and say you can't, but, I mean, they're not even going up to the car so they don't see the car,
Right.
but you do have to keep aware, and they don't have to walk up to them, going, I see a blue sticker over there, I gotta go over and talk to the guy and say, your sticker's outdated, you gotta get that done, it's supposed to be done, and, I really think they should have the form there and say, here's the form. Just drop it in the mailbox out there, and you'll have it by next Sunday when you can come back again.
Rebecca Wolin?
I just want to second what Nikki's saying. And not having a scientific survey, but every time I've been at the transfer station, and I'm glad Nikki brought this up because that's why I'm here. The cars do not have stickers. They don't even have last year's stickers, and they're emptying all their garbage. There's construction people, and it's just I think that's wrong. I can't believe that every week when I am there for 5 minutes, that every car doesn't have a sticker and that's the only time that they're there. I mean, they don't have yellow stickers or blue stickers even. So it's not even that they forgot to buy one July 1st. They haven't bought
They're
one
without
last.
stickers.
So I don't know that they're dumping legally.
Maybe they weren't here last year.
But if they have no stickers,
Then they
then
shouldn't
they
be there.
shouldn't be there at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing for somebody who's ongoing stickers to not have updated their sticker, that's bad enough. But people with no stickers at all should not be there at all.
It's
So would
not
you
up to me to tell them, or it's not up to me to even go, I don't even want to bring it up with anybody these days, because you never know how people are going to react. But I don't want to be, you read too many stories, I don't think it'll happen here, but you never know. So basically, I think I don't know how you want to enforce it, but no one's checking stickers.
Well,
Okay, so Susan, can you?
Yep.
When you reach out to Jim, touch base on those items
I will indeed.
and, about the transfer station. Other than that, I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
I'll vote yes,
yes.
meeting adjourned at,
Really.
8:09 PM. Have a good evening.
It is even. And I'm not gonna go back to my other job. I was. I'm not going.